Greetings, and welcome back to the 31 Nights of Frights. In the last episode, we took a look at John Landis's 1981 horror comedy film, An American Werewolf in London. It's often regarded as the greatest werewolf movie ever made, and made a massive impact on the horror genre with its offbeat humour and groundbreaking special effects done by the great Rick Baker. And for today's video, we're staying in the year 1981, as we look into the movie that Stephen King once called the most ferociously original horror film of the year. It's also the first installment of one of horror's greatest franchises, and one of the most successful independent movies ever made with one of the biggest cult followings. It put the names Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi on the map. It's outrageous, it was controversial, and it's also the ultimate experience in grueling terror. It's The Evil Dead. The plot of the film follows 5 friends: Ash Williams, played by Bruce Campbell, his sister Cheryl, played by Alan Sandweiss, Ash's girlfriend Linda, played by Betsy Baker, Ash's best friend Scotty, played by Hal Dalrich, and Shelley, played by Teresa Tilly, who go on vacation to an isolated old cabin in the woods. In the basement of the cabin, they come across a book, inked in blood and bound in human flesh, called Naturom Demonto, roughly translated, the Book of the Dead, along with a tape recorder that belonged to an archaeologist called Raymond Knowby. Upon playing the tape recording of Knowby reciting demonic incantations from the book, demonic entities are resurrected and mayhem ensues. One by one, the friends are possessed and transformed into vicious deadites as they are taken by the Evil Dead. Now, anyone who knows me knows that I'm obsessed with the Evil Dead. From a replica chainsaw hand signed by Bruce Campbell to numerous action figures, artworks which were done by Graham Humphreys, a legendary horror artist who did the original UK artwork for the film upon its release, a 1/3 scale statue of Ash Williams, and actual pieces of the real Evil Dead 2 cabin. I tried to collect as much Evil Dead stuff as I possibly can, and it takes up a good portion of my entire collection. It's safe to say that I love this franchise, so much so that I don't even know where to begin talking about these movies. There's just too much for me to say. So let's just start at the beginning. Long before Sam Raimi became a well-known name in Hollywood, he was making short Super 8 movies with his childhood friend, Bruce Campbell. During this time, Raimi met future producer and collaborator Robert Tapert, and the three of them decided to make a Super 8 horror film called Within the Woods. This short film was made as a proof of concept to attract the interest of financiers and raise money to make a full-length feature film. One of the ways Raimi garnered interest in the project was by persuading a local theatre manager to screen Within the Woods alongside showings of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Those must have been the ultimate cult movie nights. Essentially, Within the Woods was the prototype of what would be The Evil Dead, and you can see exactly how it evolved into the cult classic we all know and love today. So after Raimi and Campbell asked, and sometimes begged, a variety of people for a donation towards the project, they finally raised barely enough money to start filming their independent movie. The film's budget is roughly estimated at about $350,000. It's crazy to think that a few decades later, Raimi would be working on his third installment of his Spider-Man trilogy with a $350 million budget, which at the time was the most expensive feature film ever made. Now, it's no secret that the filming of The Evil Dead was an absolute nightmare, and it definitely caused a lot of tensions between the cast and the crew. The movie was filmed on location at a remote rundown cabin in Morristown, Tennessee, which also acted as housing for many of the crew members. The cabin had no plumbing, so people went for days without taking a shower, and most people involved with the film ended up getting sick due to the freezing weather. In fact, by the end of the production, most of the furniture that was within the cabin was actually burnt to make fires to keep a lot of the cast and crew warm. And speaking of things that are less than satisfactory, the contact lenses worn by the cast when wearing Deadite makeup were as thick as glass and were ridiculously uncomfortable to wear. They could only be used for up to 15 minutes at a time, and there was near to no vision through them at all. On top of this, Sam Raimi is a director who's known for terrorizing his cast. He once said that if everyone was in extreme pain and misery, it would translate into horror. He especially loved torturing his best friend, Bruce Campbell, and that would become way more apparent in the sequels to The Evil Dead. At one point during filming, Bruce twisted his leg while running down a steep hill, so Sam Raimi decided to wind him up by poking at his injury with sticks. That's a true friendship right there. I recently did an interview with Betsy Baker and Teresa Tilly on the Evil Dead Italia's channel. I will post a link to the full interview in the description below if you want to go check it out. It's a a really interesting interview and we talk a lot about the making of The Evil Dead. At one point in the interview, I actually asked them if they had got their revenge on Sam Raimi for everything that he put them through during the making of The Evil Dead, and they said,
"No, we haven't yet. There's always a chance we could have more revenge against Sam and what he did to us. Probably do it in a very loving way. It wouldn't be tremendously vicious, but never. It's never going to be over."
Bruce Campbell also said that in scenes where he shoots a shotgun, there were no props involved whatsoever. That was a real shotgun being shot out of a window with real ammunition on the set. The production of The Evil Dead is the most insane scuff thing ever, I swear. This will be a good time to talk about all the amazing special effects work for the film that was done by a man called Tom Sullivan. He did everything from creating and illustrating the Book of the Dead to designing and applying all of the different Deadite makeups, and of course, that awesome gory special effects stop motion sequence in the film's finale. At the end of a day of shooting, Bruce Campbell would go home in the back of a pickup truck as he would be absolutely covered in fake blood from head to toe, which also took him hours to remove. I bet that was an interesting sight for the locals of Morristown. The Evil Dead was also the film that really pioneered the shaky cam. Sam Raimi found a way of emulating the Steadicam, a recently developed camera technique at the time that was used prominently in Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. He mounted the camera on a piece of 2x4 with handles at either side and had two camera operators run along with it. This is how Raimi achieved the smooth yet otherworldly movement of the evil force in the film that is now a very iconic aspect of the Evil Dead movies. When the film was completed, it was originally called Book of the Dead, and Raimi and all of his crew celebrated with a premiere event at the Redford Theatre in Detroit, Michigan. The venue was chosen as Bruce Campbell used to go there often in his youth to watch movies, and I just so happened to have two unused tickets from that very night, one of which I got signed by Bruce Campbell, and I actually purchased these from the producer Scott Spiegel. Overall, the audience responded very positively to the film. However, some of the cast weren't so pleased, specifically Alan Sandweiss, who played Cheryl, as she never knew the full extent of the tree attack scene until that night, and she also had family there watching. Teresa Tilley and Betsy Baker also weren't so proud of the movie after its release and kept it off their professional resumes for years until the cult status really kicked in and they found a new appreciation for it over time. Now keep in mind this film came out in the year 1981. At the time, this was an extremely controversial film, despite some people even at the time finding it somewhat comical, and it does have its comical elements, sometimes due to the low budget look of the film and the low budget effects and cheesy acting, and the comedy aspect of it is something that the sequels would definitely build up on. But The Evil Dead was an extreme balls to the wall film for the time it was made. Remember that we're still in that splatter era of horror movies, and the censors really start to crack down on graphic violence in films. But Sam Raimi said, "Ah, it," and he made a movie as gory and as grotesque as possible with no fear of the censorship. And when it came to finding distribution for the movie, Sam Raimi came across a man by the name of Irving Shapiro. Shapiro was a producer and distributor who was the first to handle films by directors such as Martin Scorsese and Stanley Kubrick. But he was also the man who distributed George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. Yeah, Night of the Living Dead. And if you've seen my video on the Night of the Living Dead, you know how big of a deal that is. When Shapiro watched the film, he jokingly said it's not exactly Gone with the Wind, but he knew the film had a commercial appeal to it. Right up until this point, the movie was titled Book of the Dead, but it was Irving Shapiro who suggested to Raimi that the film should be retitled To the Evil Dead. So Irving Shapiro came up with that name. What a legend. Shapiro passed away in 1989 at the age of 82, but his legacy certainly lives on within cinematic history. As I just said, The Evil Dead was extremely notorious when it was released and distributed. It was given an X rating, it was put on the Videos Nasties list and was banned in the UK, as well as many other countries. In fact, I think in a few countries it's still banned to this day, which is crazy. There's a great video you can find on YouTube of Sam Raimi appearing on British TV, and it's basically him defending The Evil Dead against a load of snooty British pricks. It's a really entertaining watch, so I'll link it in the description below if you want to check that out. It also shows just how controversial this film was when it came out. When I had the massive honour of meeting Sam Raimi at the Texas Frightmare Convention in 2019, he told me that an English court actually held a trial to determine if the Evil Dead was obscene, and Raimi actually flew all the way over here just to testify. Looking back now, The Evil Dead isn't that bad in terms of its overall violence and gore. Time has certainly taken a toll on this film in that sense, and I don't mean that in a negative way whatsoever. People are a lot more desensitized now, and if people were finding this film funny back when it was released, a lot more people find it more funny now. It was made on a seriously low budget and it was in the dawn of the 80s. But there's no doubt that at the time, The Evil Dead was f***ing hardcore. So in conclusion, The Evil Dead is a film that has an extraordinary legacy. It's one of the most notable independent films in history that spawned one of the most successful cult franchises in cinema. It also gave birth to one of horror's most loved characters with Ash Williams, and literally made the careers of Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi. The whole franchise is adored worldwide, and for good reason. I have to say that Evil Dead 2 is my absolute favourite though. In fact, I would go as far as saying it's my favourite film of all time. So I'll probably have to get around to talking about that one, because I have plenty to say about it. I have plenty of stuff to say about the original Evil Dead as well, so much so that I've probably not even covered 1% of my thoughts about this film within this video. The Evil Dead is also a ridiculously influential film, especially for young and aspiring filmmakers. It's made a massive impact on people for decades, and it will for decades to come. It was an extremely grueling film to make with a ridiculously low budget, but it just goes to show that with a lot of commitment, blood, sweat, tears, and a lot more blood, you can achieve any goal or create anything you want as long as you have a passion for the cause. Decades later, The Evil Dead still scares, shocks, and disturbs audiences, and it also remains as one of horror's most influential movies. So that ends today's video. You'll have to let me know in the comments what you guys think about The Evil Dead. You can also tell me what you think about the whole trilogy. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this amazing franchise. And don't forget to join me in the next episode where we take a look at one of horror's most iconic characters. See you in your dreams. I mean, see you there.